The message came just after lunch on a rainy Wednesday. Madison Carter was hunched over a scale model at the studio, her hands meticulously placing a miniature pendant light over a mahogany spa tub, when her phone buzzed. Charlene Carter. Her mother never called without warning. Madison wiped the wood glue off her fingers, answered with a cautious, "Hey, Mom," and braced herself. What she didn't expect was the cold steel that slid between her ribs less than 30 seconds later. "We've decided to cancel the engagement party at the Biltmore Conservatory," Charlene said, her tone calm, rehearsed, almost rehearsed. "It's just too extravagant. With everything going on, we feel a smaller venue is more fitting." Madison blinked. Once. Twice. "You're telling me this 4 days before the invitations go out?" "Sweetheart, let's not be dramatic. The conservatory is lovely, but it's not about the venue," Madison cut in. "It's about Ethan." A long silence stretched across the line. "We just think," Charlene finally said, "that with Ethan's background, expectations should be set reasonably." Madison's knuckles whitened. She stepped away from her drafting table, out of the open concept space, and into the corridor, shutting the frosted glass door behind her. "I already put down the deposit, with my own money." "What exactly are you trying to avoid?" "People talk, darling. You know how Asheville is. And the conservatory isn't just a space. It says something. And we don't want to send the wrong message about your future." Madison almost laughed. Instead, she hung up, quietly, without a word. By the time she re-entered the studio, her business partner Harper took one look at her and said, "Tell me you didn't just murder someone." "Not yet," Madison replied, "but the day's still young." That night, she sat curled on the couch of their downtown loft, legs under a blanket, staring at her laptop screen. The invitation she'd designed with love and detail, a digital watercolor of the conservatory's greenhouse arch, soft blush and sage tones, was still open. A ping broke her reverie, a text from Caroline, her younger sister. "Heard Mom canceled the conservatory. Kinda sucks. But hey, she's moving my 30th there instead. Guess we're keeping it in the family." Madison stared at the message, her throat tightening. So this wasn't about money. It was about shame, about image, about rewriting her out of the family narrative, politely but surgically. They weren't just canceling the party. They were replacing her. She met Ethan Blake 2 years ago at a Tech Meets Design conference in Charleston. She was giving a talk on sensory design in wellness spaces. He was the last one to ask a question, something deeply technical about biometric integration. When he spoke, the room had fallen silent. After the session, he walked up to her with a shy, crooked smile and a coffee-stained conference tote bag. "I loved your talk," he said, "but have you considered what happens if the sensors in spa tiles fail mid-experience? Do you have a redundancy model?" She'd laughed, because no one had ever asked her that before. Then they spent the next 2 hours arguing over the feasibility of programmable water temperature in eco-conscious spas. He wore worn jeans, scuffed Timberlands, and a passion that lit him up from the inside out. She liked him immediately. He was kind, brilliant, real. 6 months after that, she brought him home to meet the Carters. It was a disaster. Her father, Randall, had pulled Ethan aside after the soup course and asked, "What's your 5-year exit strategy? Or is this more of a bootstrap and burnout type of venture?" Charlene hadn't even looked up from her wine glass when she asked if his company actually had any real clients. Caroline had just smiled politely and stayed quiet. But an hour after dinner, Madison received a text. "He seems nice, but really? A Subaru?" Still, she had hope. She always did. Maybe they just needed time. But that hope officially died the moment she got another text. This time from Harper. "I just got an alert. Caroline's birthday bash is now set at the Biltmore Conservatory. That's not the same date as your party, right?" Madison didn't answer. She just stared at the screen, nausea creeping up her spine. Ethan came in from the balcony, laptop in hand, headphones around his neck. He noticed her expression, sat beside her, and waited. She showed him the messages. Her voice broke as she tried to explain. "They're not just canceling the party. They're giving it to Caroline. They don't want to celebrate us, Ethan, because they're ashamed of you." He didn't flinch. He'd expected this. "I told you," he said gently. "Some people only understand worth if it comes with a Wall Street return and a monogrammed belt." "But they're my family," she whispered. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "And I'm your future. You get to decide what matters more." At 1:14 a.m., Madison opened her laptop again. She deleted the digital invite. The conservatory was gone. In its place, she opened a blank document. At the top, she typed, "Our celebration, our way." Then she leaned back, eyes burning, spine straighter than ever. "That night," her voice echoes in narration, "something inside me cracked open, not from pain, but from clarity. I'd spent years trying to merge two worlds that were never meant to meet in the middle. And for the first time, I stopped trying to fit in and started planning my way out." The next morning, Madison opened her inbox to a ping from her mother's assistant. Subject line, "Celebrating Caroline's 30th, Biltmore Conservatory Edition." She didn't need to click on the attachment to know what it was, but she did. A gold-trimmed invitation loaded with social polish and artificial grace bloomed onto her screen, practically a carbon copy of the one she had designed only 2 weeks earlier for her own engagement celebration. Same font, same theme, same venue, except now her name was gone, and in its place, Caroline Carter. Madison stared at the screen for a full minute before quietly closing her laptop. She didn't cry, she boiled. It was like they took my dream, airbrushed out my name, and handed it to my sister like it had been hers all along. Her thoughts echoed in voiceover, clipped and bitter. She made herself coffee, but left it untouched. She tried to focus on client work, but found her pencil trembling too hard to draw a straight line. The betrayal had morphed into something worse: replacement. Not only had her family invalidated her relationship with Ethan, they had repurposed her love, her effort, her milestone, as a backdrop for someone they deemed more appropriate, someone like Caroline. When Madison was 10, she had once asked her father what legacy meant. Randall Carter had smiled, folded his newspaper, and said, "Legacy is what lives on after you've stopped talking. It's what others say about you when you're not in the room." That definition used to inspire her. Now it felt like a noose. Growing up in the Biltmore Forest neighborhood, life was a silent pageant. Every Sunday was brunch at the country club. Every school report card was a PR performance. Emotions were repressed, posture was everything, and rules were written in cursive. She remembered being 12, walking into a charity gala in a hand-me-down velvet dress and being told by her mother to stand up straighter, chin down, but not too much, you'll look uncertain. Her sister Caroline had mastered that world early. She knew how to nod at the right moments, how to speak in rehearsed poise, how to float through expectations like a debutante in permanent motion. Madison didn't float. She tripped, questioned, resisted. She chose public school when everyone else went private. She wore thrifted jeans. She interned at a design shelter for unhoused veterans when she could have gone to D.C. with the senator's daughter. She was the misfit heir to a dynasty she never believed in. Later that afternoon, she met Harper at a cozy cafe off Lexington Avenue. They sat on the patio, wind nudging the umbrella above their heads. "They're using your exact florist," Harper said as she poured oat milk into her latte. "Like identical peony arrangements. You sure you're not being punked?" Madison smirked, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's not a prank, it's a pattern." She stirred her coffee with slow frustration, watching the foam spiral. "They don't erase you by accident," she added. "They do it with linen napkins and perfect guest lists." Harper leaned back in her chair. "You know, I still remember the time Caroline got a standing ovation for reciting your dad's shareholder speech at dinner." "She's not my sister," Madison muttered. "She's a walking LinkedIn profile." Harper chuckled, but quickly softened. "Hey, you don't have to prove anything. You built your own name. You own your firm. Your clients adore you." "I know," Madison said. "But it's not about needing their approval anymore. It's about realizing I never had their respect to begin with." At home that night, Ethan sat on their balcony, sketching quietly in a moleskin notebook. Madison stood by the sliding glass door, watching him from a distance. He looked up, offering her a tired but soft smile. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said honestly. He nodded and returned to his sketching. "I don't want you to feel like you have to pick sides," he said gently, "but I also won't let them hurt you over and over again just because they gave you your last name." Madison stepped onto the balcony, wrapped herself in a blanket, and sat beside him. "You've done everything right," she whispered, "and it still wasn't enough." "For them," Ethan said, "not for me. I'm here because I love you, not because I need their blessing. But you need to stop craving it, Maddie. Your peace isn't worth their pedigree." She looked out at the Asheville skyline. She didn't respond, but the silence between them was honest, safe. 2 days later, Charlene called and invited Madison to dinner. "Just us girls," she said. "Let's talk. No pressure." The Grove Park Inn was beautiful as always. Sunset casting gold across the Blue Ridge horizon, linen napkins pressed like origami, servers silent as ghosts. They ordered trout almondine and a bottle of Chardonnay. The small talk was brittle. Then came the ambush. "I admire your independence, Madison," Charlene said, slicing her fish. "Truly. But marrying Ethan, that's a decision that limits you. It reflects on all of us." Madison put down her fork. "So you'd rather I marry someone from your cocktail circuit just so you can brag about it over tea?" "Don't be childish," Charlene said. "It's not about bragging. It's about stability. It's about perception." Madison didn't yell. She didn't cry. She stood. "You're not a mentor, Mom. You're a mirror. And all you care about is what people see in the reflection." She left before dessert arrived. The next day, Caroline showed up at her studio unannounced. She looked off, like someone who hadn't slept, or someone who'd been pretending too hard for too long. "Mom's reusing your caterer," she said. Madison arched a brow. "Flattering. And your playlist, the jazz trio you booked for your party? She asked them to rework the set list for my dinner." "Let me guess. Something more upscale rustic?" Caroline didn't laugh. She sat on the armrest of the leather couch near Madison's desk. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "I didn't even want a big party. But Dad's announcing my VP promotion that night. If I back out, it'll mess up everything." "You didn't earn it," Madison replied flatly. "You inherited it." Caroline flinched, stood up. "You were always the brave one," she whispered. "I just learned how to survive." Madison didn't respond, but something in her expression softened. Just a little. That night, back home, Madison sat beside Ethan again. He showed her sketches of a possible new headquarters for his startup, assuming the Nova MedTech acquisition went through. "You should design it," he said. "A Carter building not built for legacy, built for purpose." She laughed. For the first time in days, she felt lighter. "What if we just hosted our own engagement celebration?" she said suddenly. "No pressure, no chandeliers, just people we care about." Ethan looked up from his sketchbook. "You sure?" "I've never been more sure." Madison opened her laptop and typed a new guest list. But this time, she didn't include half the city's social elite. She added names that mattered. Her college roommate who once loaned her $200 to start the business. Her favorite professor from design school. The animal shelter director she volunteered with for years. Ethan's mom, who'd never once asked about her net worth, just whether she was good to her son. She booked a rooftop at a small local brewery called the Iron Vine. She wrote the new invitation herself. No pretense, no performance, just love. Join us for something real. And as she hit send, she felt something shift. They built their kingdom on perception, she thought. But I was done curtsying to castles I didn't want to live in. It was time to build my own. Saturday night came wrapped in a chilly wind, the kind that curled around your shoulders like doubt. Madison Carter sat quietly in the passenger seat of Ethan's Subaru, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the glowing lights of the Biltmore Conservatory ahead. Her heart pounded against her ribcage like it was trying to claw its way out. "I'm not sure I can do this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan didn't look at her, just kept his eyes on the entrance ahead, where valet attendants in navy coats greeted guests with robotic smiles. "You don't have to," he replied softly. "But if you do, we do it together." Madison swallowed hard. She reached for the door handle, then paused. "No, I need to see this. I need to face what they did, not to change them, but to stop letting them define me. She stepped out into the night air. Ethan followed, tugging his blazer tighter against the cold. They didn't speak as they walked toward the grand glass doors. Inside, the venue glowed in blush pink and champagne gold. String lights draped from the conservatory arches like vines in bloom. The familiar scent of Madison's favorite white peonies hit her instantly, her own florist's work, repurposed. Her chest tightened, but she kept walking. Heads turned. There was a brief lull in the background jazz as guests took note. Some whispered, others stared openly. One older woman leaned toward her husband and said, "Isn't that the one who started the design firm downtown? The older daughter?" Charlene Carter spotted them first. Her carefully practiced smile faltered for half a second before she glided over like a debutante in damage control mode. "Madison," she said through her teeth, "what a surprise. And Ethan," she added, her voice dipping ever so slightly. "We weren't expecting you." Madison returned the smile, hers far less rehearsed. "We heard there was the party at our venue. Thought we'd stop by." Charlene's eyes flared at the word "our," but she recovered quickly. "Well," she said tightly, "let's not make this about anything else. Tonight is for Caroline." "Of course," Madison replied, her tone sweet but steely. "Wouldn't dream of overshadowing her." They stepped inside, slipping into the crowd like ghosts in their own family's narrative. Ethan was immediately sidelined. No introductions, no handshakes. One of Randall's longtime golf buddies mistook him for part of the waitstaff and tried to hand him an empty glass. Madison saw it all, saw Ethan smile politely, saw the flush of quiet humiliation rise on his cheeks, and she burned with something deeper than anger. Not rage, not sadness, resolve. Nearby, Randall was laughing a bit too loudly with Jonathan Drake, the son of a prominent Atlanta banker, and Caroline's on-again, off-again, but always approved beau. Madison made her way to the open bar. She asked for a bourbon neat. When the bartender raised an eyebrow, she added, "It's not for the taste, it's for the symbolism." He grinned. Respect. Then came the toast. The lights dimmed slightly, and Randall took the stage. He stood behind a crystal podium, champagne flute in hand. The room silenced immediately, because when Randall Carter spoke, people listened. "Tonight," he began, "we celebrate not just a birthday, but a legacy, a future, a woman who embodies the very best of what the Carter name represents." He turned to Caroline, who sat glowing beneath a spray of candlelight and orchids. "She's intelligent, poised, strategic. She honors tradition while blazing her own trail. And it is my pleasure to announce, officially, that Caroline will be stepping into the role of Vice President of Development at Carter and Mason." Applause erupted. Jonathan reached for Caroline's hand. Flashbulbs popped. Madison didn't clap. She looked at Ethan, who gave her a tiny nod. She was still holding the bourbon. She downed it in one sip and stood. As the crowd settled back into their conversations, Madison made her way to the dessert table, where her sister stood, smiling nervously. "Congratulations," Madison said. Caroline turned, her eyes wary. "Thanks." Madison's voice was even. "So this is the reward, huh? Play their game? Get the crown?" Caroline's smile faltered. "It's not like that." "Isn't it?" Madison leaned in slightly. "Same venue, same flowers, same speech probably. Just needed a different face." And Caroline opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked down. "I didn't ask for this." "But you didn't say no." Caroline sighed. "Dad said this was my moment, that it had to be polished." Madison looked around the room. "It's not your moment. It's their narrative, and they just let you star in it." Back at their table, Ethan sat quietly, sipping water. Madison joined him, eyes scanning the room. That's when she saw him. A man in his 50s, sharply dressed, speaking to Randall in the far corner. His demeanor wasn't flashy, but his presence was commanding. Ethan followed her gaze. "That's Robert Ashford," he said under his breath. Madison blinked. "Nova MedTech?" Ethan nodded. "CEO. I've been in confidential talks with their team for months." Madison's stomach dropped. As if on cue, Robert Ashford glanced toward them. His eyes landed on Ethan. His expression shifted. Recognition, then surprise, then interest. He leaned toward Randall and asked something. Randall's eyebrows furrowed. Then he turned to look directly at Ethan. Madison froze. "What's happening?" she whispered. Ethan's face was calm, but his knuckles were white on the edge of the table. "I think your father just realized who I am." They left quietly, coats over their arms, steps deliberate. Just before reaching the exit, Charlene intercepted them. "You're leaving already?" she asked, clearly trying to mask her confusion. Madison smiled. "This was never our stage. We just came to confirm what we already knew." Charlene blinked. "And what's that?" Madison leaned in, voice soft but cutting. "That you built a world so carefully curated you forgot to leave room for real people." She turned and walked out, Ethan close behind. Back at their apartment, Madison paced the living room while Ethan opened his laptop. "You should know," he said. "The acquisition. It's official. It closes Monday morning. $150 million. Madison stared. "You're serious?" Ethan turned the screen toward her. There it was, an embargoed press release titled, "Nova MedTech acquires surgical AI, Pioneer Blake in $150 million deal." She sat down slowly. Ethan's voice was gentle. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want the money to change how we are. I wanted them to see me before the headline." Madison reached for his hand. "You didn't need a headline. You've always been enough." Her phone buzzed. A text from Caroline. "What the hell did Ethan do? Dad and Robert are freaking out." Madison didn't respond. She opened a new message, this time to Charlene and Randall. "Let's talk. Monday, 11 a.m. at Riverside Conservatory. I'll handle the reservation." She hit send and smiled. Narration, voiceover. "They took my celebration. They rewrote my love story. But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to return the favor with the truth." The sun was still low when Madison stood by the window, her coffee gone cold in her hand. Outside, Asheville was bathed in morning gold, the streets just beginning to stir. It was Monday, and today was war in silk gloves. Her phone buzzed again, another missed call from her father, and then a text from Charlene. "Robert Ashford just called us personally. Is it true? Please call us." Madison didn't reply. She didn't need to. Instead, she opened her messages and typed, "Let's talk. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., Riverside Conservatory. I'll handle the reservation." Then she set her phone down, walked to the bedroom, and pulled out the same minimalist navy suit she'd worn to pitch her first solo design contract. It wasn't flashy, but it was powerful. It was her. "Are you sure you want to do this alone?" Ethan asked gently from the doorway, already dressed in jeans and a Henley, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Madison turned, took one of the mugs, and smiled. "Yeah, this one's mine." The next morning, the conservatory looked different. Less grand, less magical. Maybe it was the daylight, or maybe it was perspective. The same walls that once felt like an aspirational dream now looked like what they really were, just glass and steel. She arrived 10 minutes early. Inside, she made sure everything was set. Private room, polished table, water glasses perfectly placed, her folder of documents laid out with precision. At 10:59 a.m., the Carters arrived. Randall in his crisp blazer and expression of forced confidence. Charlene in her signature pastel coat and pearls. Caroline followed behind them, less composed than usual. She wasn't holding Jonathan Drake's arm this time. In fact, she looked like she barely wanted to be there at all. They didn't greet Madison with hugs. They didn't sit immediately. Charlene broke the silence. "So, this is about Ethan, isn't it?" Madison gestured to the seats. "It's about a lot of things. But yes, let's start there." They sat. Madison remained standing. She opened the folder and slid 2 papers across the table. One was a finalized acquisition contract. The other was a press release dated for public distribution at 9 a.m. the following day. Nova MedTech acquires surgical AI Pioneer Blake for $150 million. Charlene paled. Randall leaned in, scanning the signature lines. Caroline's eyes darted to Madison. "This is real?" Madison nodded. "Very real." Randall's mouth worked silently before he managed. Why didn't he say anything?" Madison's voice was even. "Because he didn't need to, and neither did I." Charlene blinked rapidly, clearly scrambling for footing. "We didn't know, Madison. We thought—" "Thought what?" Madison cut in. "That he was a liability? That my choices were mistakes because they didn't look like yours?" Randall frowned. "We were trying to protect you." Madison stared at him. "From what? From building a life on love and hard work instead of cocktail parties and connections?" She let the silence sit, let it burn. Then she continued. "You judged Ethan because he drove an old Subaru and wore department store shirts. You judged me because I chose to build something instead of inherit it. And then you erased us. From your narrative, from your party, from your legacy." Caroline finally spoke. "I knew he was smart, but this, Jesus." "Language," Charlene snapped automatically, but her voice was weaker now. Caroline ignored her. "No, really. This is what happens when you treat people like resumes instead of humans." Why, Jonathan Drake wasn't with her. That much was clear, and Madison noticed her younger sister's fingers twitching nervously at the edges of her coat sleeve. "I'm not going back to the firm," Caroline added quietly. "Brad started his own venture, and I'm thinking of joining him." Charlene's eyes widened in horror. Caroline didn't flinch. "No, I'm tired of trading approval for silence." Madison let the moment breathe. Then she said, "You've always taught me that appearances matter, that who you stand next to determines your value. That celebration is a privilege, not a right." Charlene began to shake her head, but Madison raised a hand. "I'm not here for apologies. I'm not even here for understanding. I just wanted you to see what you walked away from, not just a man with a brilliant mind, but a daughter who needed her parents to value more than aesthetics." Randall cleared his throat. "We'd like to make it right, host a proper party, here, this weekend. Everything done properly." Charlene nodded. "No expense spared." Madison didn't hesitate. "No." Charlene blinked. "Excuse me?" "We already have plans," Madison said. "We're hosting our engagement party at the Iron Vine. Rooftop, brewery, local food. People who show up because they care, not because they need to be seen." Randall tried again. "We were wrong. I can admit that." Madison smiled, polite but unbending. "You were. But this isn't about being right. It's about being honest. You taught me to perform, but Ethan taught me to live." She stood. "I came today to show you the cost of your prejudice. You didn't just try to erase Ethan. You tried to erase me. But I'm still here, stronger." As she gathered her folder, Caroline rose too. "I'll be at the Iron Vine," she said softly. "With Brad." Charlene opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she had no script. Madison turned at the door. "You're welcome to come," she said. "No head table, no photo ops, just truth." Then she walked out, into the sunlight. Outside, Ethan was waiting in the car. She slipped in, breathing deeply. Her shoulders relaxed for the first time in days. "How'd it go?" he asked. "They offered to host a party," she replied, buckling her seatbelt. Ethan smirked. "Tempting?" She turned to him and smiled. "Not even close." That night, as she wrote the final names on the guest list, Madison paused to look at her reflection in the dark window. Not as her mother's daughter, not as the Carter legacy. Just Madison, interior architect, co-founder, fiancé, and finally, free. Narration, voiceover. They took my venue, they took my voice. But when I walked back into that room, I didn't need their approval. I brought my own power, and I left with something they'll never own: self-worth. Saturday evening, 5:58 p.m. The sky above Asheville was painted in warm strokes of gold and amber as the sun began to slip behind the Blue Ridge Mountains. The Iron Vine Brewery rooftop, once just a blank canvas in Madison's mind, now glowed with soft string lights, flickering candles, and the gentle clink of glasses. The scent of rosemary flatbread and local peach cobbler drifted in the breeze. Everything was perfect, not in a polished magazine kind of way, but in the way that felt real. Madison stood by the edge of the rooftop, barefoot for a moment, her heels dangling from one hand. The wood deck was warm beneath her feet. She breathed in the scent of aged oak barrels and citrusy hops and smiled to herself. Tonight wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about finally feeling right. The first guests to arrive were Harper and her wife Julia, both glowing with excitement. Julia balanced a homemade strawberry shortcake in one hand and a bouquet of wildflowers in the other. Harper hugged Madison tightly. "This place looks like you. Not the version they tried to shape, but the version you built." Madison smiled. "That means everything." Over the next hour, the rooftop filled with faces that mattered. Her interns from the design studio arrived in pairs, eyes wide with awe at the setting. Her old professor from Savannah School of Art and Design gave Ethan a firm handshake and a proud nod. Then came Ethan's childhood best friend, Marcus, and even Mrs. Devlin, the retired librarian who once snuck young Ethan's science books after school hours. People hugged, laughed, shared stories, no formalities, no power plays, just community. Madison stood at the bar, sipping lavender lemonade when Ethan approached, adjusting the sleeves of his crisp white shirt. He looked completely himself, simple, elegant, and entirely unaware of the quiet magnetism he carried. "You okay?" he asked, nudging her gently. She nodded. "I keep waiting for the anxiety to creep in, but it hasn't. I think I finally believe we deserve this." He smiled. "You always did. You just needed the space to breathe it in." As music from the live acoustic trio picked up, Harper clinked a spoon against a glass and stepped up to the mic. "Before we dive into the beer flights and grilled peach salads," she grinned, "I just want to say a few things about the couple who brought us all here." Everyone turned to listen, plates half filled, drinks halfway raised. "I've known Madison since college," Harper continued, "and I've seen her navigate storms with more grace than most people show in sunshine. She has a way of making spaces feel like homes, and people feel like they matter." And then Ethan came along, this quiet genius who matched her not with ego, but with steadiness. Together, they're the kind of story I wish more people knew, because it's not built on status or spectacle. It's built on choice, on courage, and on the belief that love is enough. She raised her glass. "To Madison and Ethan, may your future be as intentional as this night." Applause erupted. Ethan squeezed Madison's hand. "You ready to speak?" She stepped forward slowly, accepting the mic. The breeze tousled her hair as she looked around at the group, her chosen family. Madison took a breath. "I didn't grow up thinking I'd have to fight for a party," she began. "I thought things like this came with birthrights, with family names. But this isn't just a celebration of our engagement. It's a celebration of clarity." The rooftop fell quiet. "I used to think success meant being accepted by the people who raised me. But I've learned that success is building something so solid, so meaningful, that even when they walk away, you still stand." She looked at Ethan. "And to the man who never asked me to prove anything, thank you, for being the kind of rich that matters, rich in heart, in patience, in faith." The applause this time felt different, warmer, earned. Just as she stepped down, movement by the entrance caught her eye. Charlene and Randall. They stood near the edge of the crowd, uncertain, without their usual entourage or pomp. Caroline was with them, arm in arm with Brad, the man her parents once deemed too small-time. Tonight, he looked like everything but. Charlene approached first. "Madison," she said softly, "this is beautiful." Madison blinked. "You came. If you'll have us," Randall added, his voice low. "We didn't come to reclaim anything, just to witness what we failed to see before." Madison glanced toward Ethan, who nodded once, respectful but reserved. Caroline stepped forward. "Brad quit the firm," she said. "He's opening his own marketing agency. I'm thinking of joining him." Madison raised a brow. "What changed?" Caroline looked around. Watching you take your power back, it reminded me of what freedom feels like." As the evening unfolded, the rooftop transformed into a place of quiet reconciliation. Madison's old professors spoke with Randall about architecture programs. Charlene complimented Julia on the dessert. Even Brad found common ground with Marcus over local microbrews. Later in the night, Randall found Ethan alone at the bar. "I don't expect forgiveness," Randall said, "but I owe you something." Ethan turned. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," Randall said, "for underestimating you. For assuming worth comes with pedigree. I was wrong." Ethan studied him. "You're not the first. You probably won't be the last. But I didn't fall in love with Madison to gain your respect." Randall gave a dry chuckle. "That's what makes you worthy of it." No handshake, no grand gesture, just a quiet agreement to begin again. Near the end of the night, as fairy lights danced in the wind and soft jazz filled the air, Madison and Ethan shared their first dance. No one announced it, no spotlight hit them. But slowly, the music took hold, and guests made space as the couple swayed together, awkward, playful, unchoreographed. Perfect. Around them, stories flowed. Harper snapped Polaroids. Caroline laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. And Ethan, eyes locked with Madison's, whispered, "I'd do it all again. Every insult, every quiet room, if it led us here." Madison pressed her forehead to his. "We made it ours," she said. "All of it." As the night deepened and the stars above Asheville glittered brighter than any ballroom chandelier, Madison stood by the edge of the rooftop again, heels in hand, breath calm. Narration. Voiceover. "They took my venue. They tried to take my voice, my name, my choices. But standing here, with the wind in my hair and love at my side, I remembered. They never had that power. I just forgot I did." Final. Closing. The camera pans out over the rooftop. Warm lights, heartfelt embraces, music humming softly. And then her voice again, clear and steady. This wasn't just an engagement party. It was a beginning. Not of a marriage, but of a life that finally belonged to us.